Hey everybody, this is Thomas Kirsch for P582, and this video is on strength-based education. I found this to be an interesting concept and something that I've been inadvertently applying in my practices as a coach. I didn't have a word for it, but now I do. So I found it interesting that I'm already using some of these principles in my own work. But let's jump into the topic. So how would I use these principles? Well, the first principle is to have a measurement of the strengths for the student. So you need to have the appropriate data on hand to assess the student's strengths, weaknesses, and their interests. Once you have that, you can better serve the student. This is not just a test. So, for example, I'm a water polo coach, so I wouldn't just test their swimming ability. I would test their ball handling ability, their ability to communicate, things that may indirectly benefit them as a water polo player. The text, the article talks on the Clifton Strengths Finder test, and they viewed that as a beneficial means for assessment for the measurement of strengths. So that's the first principle. Having those metrics in place so that you can be a better judge of what the student's strengths actually are. And again, the biggest thing for strengths-based education is that you're not just teaching the student a new skill. You're telling them and showing them what their strengths are and how they can use their strengths to become better at other things, not just at their own strength, but focusing on what they're good at. And a lot of students respond positively to that. Sorry, pop up. The second principle is individualization. Sorry, folks. Individualization. This means that the educator or coach takes the time to personalize the experience for the student. The example that I came up with was, I could tell a strong swimmer related to water polo, I could tell a strong swimmer to really focus on their strength of speed. They may not have the best ball handling ability, they may not be able to shoot the ball harder, or even have better vision in the pool, but if they really focus on the fact that, hey, I can get from point A to point B before the person next to me, they can find success just from doing that in the sport. And that was one example. Another thing I came up with is I could also ask the student athlete to pick a conditioning drill, ask them to pick, that would allow them to focus on their strength. So again, if this student was a great shooter, I could put them into a shooting drill, and that will be something that they can already improve on if they're already great at shooting, and this is something that can reinforce positive habits within them. The third principle is networking. So getting students to network with one another is a great way for them to utilize their strengths and even to discover new strengths. From the text, the quote I found beneficial was, and I quote, "High levels of social support are associated with the ability to become adept as using personal strengths." So if they're able to make these meaningful connections with their teammates, and even outside of education, coworkers or friends and family, that can reinforce that, hey, you know what, Tommy, you are a good swimmer, and you can use your swimming ability to become a better water polo player, so on and so forth, or even a better student. One example that I came up with for Principle 3 is, I could have my student athletes actually lead drills and, separate myself from practice for 10 minutes and allow them to communicate with, okay, team, we're going to work on this. And ideally, you would want a person who's strong at that skill to lead the skill. And that's a great way to build a networking exercise for again, a water polo team, which is where I'm coming from on this. Principle 4, deliberate application. So it's important to draw out and to bring forth strengths that exist in students. It's good for them to be aware of what their strengths are. It's also important that and again, I'm talking about a water polo team. It's important for teammates to recognize what they're good at and what their teammates are good at, so that they can bring the best out of each other. That's the great thing about team sports, I think, is that you're not going to have somebody that, and you might, but you're not going to have somebody that can do it all. So some people are good at one thing, another person is good at another thing. It takes a lot of different skill sets in order to find success in athletics. A great way that I came up with to apply this principle would be to do a team building exercise. So again, if I had to relate it to water polo, I would do a controlled scrimmage, and I would balance the teams in a way where that I wouldn't put all the fastest swimmers on one team. I wouldn't put all the best shooters on one team or all the best defensive players on one team. I would scatter them and separate them and make them realize, hey, Tommy's a really good defender, but he's not the best shooter. Maybe I should put him in this spot. And that'll force the team to communicate, for one, and force them to recognize each other's strengths. Finally is the principle 5, and this is intentional development. So being able to make your students realize that their strengths aren't just permanent or static. They don't just stay the same. They can be dynamic. They can be utilized to acquire and achieve other strengths. So, again, going back to the swimming example, a strong swimmer could use their swimming ability to not only get better at swimming, they can use it. They can use it to strengthen their legs and become a better. And again, to water polo, they could be able to get out of the water harder and shoot the ball harder. That was one example I came up with. So I want to hear what you guys have to think. If you can think of any other ways that I could tie these principles into specifically the sport of water polo, what I coach, or if you have any other experiences that you have, I'd love to hear it. Thank you for your time, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video.